Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Sutta Vacha Jagrihe Paurusham Rupam Bhagavan Mahadadibihi Sambhutam Shodashakalam Adau Lokasya Srikshaya.
Sutta said, in the beginning of the creation, the Lord first expanded himself in the universal form of Purusha incarnation and manifested all the ingredients for the material creation. And thus, at first, there was a creation of the 16 principles of material action. This was the purpose of creating the material universe.
Text 2. Yasyam Vasishayanasya Yoga Nidram Vitanvataha Nabhihridam Pujadasi Brahma Vishwasrijam Patihi.
A part of Purusha lies down within the water of the universe. From the navel lake of his body sprouts a lotus stem, and from lotus flower atop his stem, Brahma, the master of all the engineers in the universe, becomes manifest.
Text 3. Yasya Vayava Samsthanai Kalpito Loka Vistaraha Tadvai Bhagavato Rupam Vishuddham Sattva-murjitam.
It is believed that all the universal planetary systems are situated on the extensive body of the Purusha, but he has nothing to do with the created material ingredients. His body is eternally in spiritual existence par excellence.
Text 4. Pashyantyado Rupamadabhrachakshusha Sahasrapado Bhujananadbhutam Sahasramurda Shravanakshi Nasikam Sahasramaulyam Barakundalolasat.
The devotees with their perfect eyes see the transcendental form of the Purusha, who is thousands of legs, thighs, arms, and faces, all extraordinary. In that body, there are thousands of heads, ears, eyes, and noses. They are decorated with thousands of helmets and glowing earrings, and all adorned with garlands.
Text 5. Etananavataranam Nidanam Bijam Avyayam Yasyam Shamshena Srijyante Devatiryanga Naradayaha.
This form, the second manifestation of the Purusha, is the source and indestructible seed of multifarious incarnations within the universe. From the particles and portions of this form, different living entities like demigods, men, and others are created.
Text 6. Sa eva pratamam deva kaumaram sargamashritah chachara duscharam brahma brahmacharyam akhanditam.
First of all, in the beginning of creation, there were the 4 unmarried sons of Brahma, the Kumaras, who, being situated in a vow of celibacy, underwent severe austerities for realization of the absolute truth.
Text 7. Dvitiyam tu bhavayasya rasatala gatamahim uddarishyannupadatta yajnesha saukaram vipuhu.
The supreme enjoyer of all sacrifices accepted the incarnation of above, the second incarnation, and for the welfare of the earth, he lifted the earth from the nether regions of the universe.
Text 8. Tritiyam rishi sargam vai devarshitva mupetya saha tantram satvatamachashta नैष्कर्म्यं कर्मणां यतः
The millennium of rishis, the personality of Godhead accepted the third empowered incarnation in the form of Devasri Narada, who is a great sage among the demigods. He collected expositions of the Vedas which deal with devotional service and which inspires non-repetitive action.
Text 9. तुर्ये धर्मकला सर्गे नरनारायणावृषि भूत्वात्मोपशमोपेतम् एकरोद्दुश्चरं तपः.
In the fourth incarnation, the Lord became Nara and Narayana, the twin sons of wife of King Dharma. Thus he undertook severe and exemplary penance to control the senses.
Text 10. Panchamakapiलो nama siddeshakala-viplutam provacha suraye sankyam tattvagrama vinirnayam.
The fifth incarnation, named Lord Kapila, is foremost among perfected beings. He gave an exposition of the creative elements and metaphysics of Asuri Brahmana, for in course of time this knowledge had been lost.
Text 11. Shashtamatrirapathyatvam pritaprapto nasuyaya anvikshiki malarkaya prahlada-dhibhya uchivan.
The sixth incarnation of Purusha was the son of sage Atri. He was born from the womb of Anasuya, who was prayed for an incarnation. He spoke on the subject of transcendence to Alarka, Prahalada, and others, Yadu, etc.
Text 12. Tata saptama akyutyam ruchir-yajño vyajayata sayamadhyai suraganai upatsvayam bhuvantaram.
The seventh incarnation was Yagna, the son of Prajapati Ruchi and his wife Akruti. He controlled the period during the change of Swayambhuva Manu and was assisted by demigods such as his son Yama.
Text 13. Ashtame meru devyam tu nabhirjata urukramaha darshayan vartmadhiranam sarvashrama namaskritam.
The eighth incarnation was King Rishabha, son of King Nabi and his wife Meru Devi. In this incarnation, the Lord showed the path of perfection, which is followed by those who have fully controlled their senses and who are honored by all orders of life.
Text 14. Rishibhiryachito bheje navavam parthivam vapuhu dugde mamoshadir vipra tenayam sa ushattamaha.
O Brahmanas, in the ninth incarnation, the Lord prayed for by sages, accepted the body of the king Prithu, who cultivated the land to yield various produce, and for that reason, the earth was beautiful and attractive.
Text 15. Rupam sajagrihe matsyam chakshushodadi samplave navyaropya mahimayam upadvai svasatam manum.
When there was a complete inundation after the period of Chaskuva Manu, and the whole world was deep within water, the Lord accepted the form of fish and protected Vaibhasvatha Manu, keeping him on a boat.
Text 16. Sura surana mudadhim matnatam mandarachalam dadre kamatharupena prishta ekadashe vibhuhu.
The 11th incarnation of the Lord took the form of a tortoise. His shell served as a pivot for the Mandara Kala hill. which was being used as turning rod by the theists and atheists of the universe.
Text 17. Danvantaram dvadashamam trayodashamam cha apaya yat surananyat mohinya mohayan striya.
In the 12th incarnation, the Lord appeared as Dhanavantri, and in the 13th, he allured the atheists by the charming beauty of a woman and gave nectar to the demigods to drink.
Text 18. Chaturdasham narasingham bibhradyatyendra murjitam dadara jairura verakam katukadritha.
The 14th incarnation, the Lord appeared as Narsimha and bifurcated the strong body of the atheist Hiranyakashipu and his nails, just as a carpenter pierces his cane.
Text 19. Panchadasham vamanakam kritva gadadvaram bhale padatrayam yachamanaha pratyadit sutstri pishtitam.
In the 15th incarnation, the Lord assumed the form of dwarf Brahmana, Vamana, and visited the arena of the sacrifice arranged by Maharaja Bali. Although at heart he was willing to regain the kingdom of the 3 planetary systems, he simply asked for a donation of 3 steps of land.
Text 20. Avatare shodashame pashyan brahma druho nripan stri sapta kritva kupito nikshatrama karonmiham.
In the 16th incarnation of the Godhead, the Lord as Brigapati annihilated the administrative class Kshatriyas 21 times, being angry with them because of the rebellion against the Brahmanas, the intelligent class.
Text 21. Tata saptadashe jataha satyavatyam parasharat chakri vedataro shaka drishtva pumsul pamedasaha.
Thereafter, in the 17th incarnation of Godhead, Sri Vyasadeva appeared in the womb of Satyavati through Parasara Muni, and he divided one Veda into several branches and sub-branches, seeing that the people in general were less intelligent.
Text 22. Naradevatva mapannaha surakaya chikirshaya samudra nigrahadini chakre viryanyata param.
In the 18th incarnation, the Lord appeared as King Rama in order to perform some pleasing work for the demigods. He exhibited superhuman prowess by controlling the Indian Ocean and then killing the atheist King Ravana, who was on the other side of the sea.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Madan Prabhu and Meera Mataji. Madan Prabhu, you read Devanagari?
Yes, I do, Prabhuji. So I find that a bit more comfortable.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you both very much for your wonderful recitations. Very nice. Nicely recited. So today we'll continue with our reading of chapter 3 of the first canto, in chapter entitled Krishna is the source of all incarnations. And today we'll be studying and discussing text number 22. Am I correct?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay.
Thank you.
I've not been following very much recently, so just wanted to make sure. So as we normally do, we'll start off by reciting the Mangala Charana prayers. You can all join me behind your muted mics also. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmalitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Vidati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sutave Pranamami Hari Priye Manchakalpa Turubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namo Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivashadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschachade Yatharine Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Naradheva Tvam Apanaha Surya Karya Chikirsaya Samudra Nigradhadini Chakraviryani Atha Param. Word for word synonyms. Nara, human being. Devatvam, divinity. Apanaha, having assumed the form of Sura, the demigods. Karya, activities. Chikir, Saya, for the purpose of performing. Samudra, the Indian Ocean. Nigraha, Adhini, controlling, etc. Chakre, to perform. Viryani, superhuman prowess. Atha Param, thereafter. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. In the 18th incarnation, the Lord appeared as King Ram. In order to perform some pleasing work for the demigods, he exhibited superhuman powers by controlling the Indian Ocean and then killing the atheist king Ravana, who was on the other side of the sea. Purport. The personality of Godhead Sri Ram assumed the form of a human being and appeared on the earth for the purpose of doing some pleasing work for the demigods or the administrative personalities to maintain the order of the universe. Sometimes great demons and atheists like Ravan and Hiranyakashipu and many others become very famous due to advancing material civilization by the help of material science and other activities with the spirit of challenging the established order of the Lord. For example, the attempt to fly to other planets by material means is a challenge to the established order. The conditions of each and every planet are different, and different classes of human beings are accommodated there for particular purposes mentioned in the codes of the law. But puffed up by tiny success in material advancement, sometimes the godless materialists challenge the existence of God. Ravana was one of them. And He wanted to deport ordinary men to the planet of Indra, heaven, by material means without consideration of the necessary qualifications. He wanted a staircase. He wanted a staircase to be built up directly reaching the heavenly planet so that people might not be required to undergo the routine of pious work necessary to enter that planet. He also wanted to perform other acts against the established order of the Lord. He even challenged the authority of Sri Ram, the personality of Godhead, and kidnapped his wife Sita. Of course, Lord Ram came to chastise the atheist, answering the prayer and desire of the demigods. He therefore took up the challenge of Ravana, and the complete activity is the subject matter of the Ramayana. Because Lord Ramachandra was the personality of Godhead, he exhibited superhuman activities which no human being, including the materially advanced Ravana, could perform. Lord Ramachandra prepared a royal road on the Indian Ocean with stones that floated on the water. The modern scientists have done research in the area of weightlessness, but it is not possible to bring in weightlessness anywhere and everywhere. But because weightlessness is the creation of the Lord, by which he can make the gigantic planets fly and float in the air, he made the stones even within this earth to be weightless and prepared a stone bridge on the sea without any supporting pillar. This is the display of the power of God. What a beautiful purport. Srila Prabhupada. So the verse again. In the 18th incarnation, the Lord appeared as King Ram in order to perform some pleasing work for the demigods. He exhibited superhuman powers by controlling the Indian Ocean and then killing the atheist King Ravana, who was on the other side of the sea. So it is said that in Sanskrit, every word can have multiple meanings. So here, Sutta Goswami is responding to the questions by the sages of Naimisharanya. And one of the questions, which was I think the 5th question, was please describe the Leela avatars, the pastime activities of the Lord. And this Sutta Goswami is explaining. And in this verse, the Lord, or Sutta Goswami, is explaining to the sages about Lord Ram. So the first interesting aspect of the verse is Nara Devatvam Apanaha. Human being, having assumed the form of human being. And in the first line, Prabhupada says, the personality of Godhead, Sri Ram, assumed the form of a human being and appeared on earth for the purpose of doing some pleasing work for the demigods. So Prabhupada writes, assuming the form of a human being. So what does that mean? Some people who are not devotees of the Lord, they mistakenly interpret this statement to mean that the Lord took a human form. And human form, by our personal experience, means blood, bone, flesh, mucus, bile, air, earth, water, fire, air, ether. That they think that the divinity, and the word here used is Devatvam, that the divinity, the supreme personality of God, it has to take a human form like us. No. Human form means a form with, 2 hands, 2 legs, 2 eyes, nose, 1 mouth, 2 ears, so on. But this form of the Lord is not like our form. The Lord's form is transcendental. Lord Ram, when he appears on this planet Earth, he doesn't have bones, blood, and so on, and muscle and proteins. The Lord's form is completely transcendental, Sachidananda Vigraha. So when we hear these statements, we should not conclude as the common men oftentimes think. We should always understand the Lord's form is completely transcendental, even when he appears on this earthly planet. So that's the first interesting point. Nara Devatvam Apanaha. And Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada translates very interestingly the purpose of the Lord's appearance as King Ram. And what is that purpose? Sura Karya Chikir Saya. That the Lord appeared to perform some pleasing work for the demigods. I was listening to Srila Prabhupada speak on this particular verse in September 1972 in Los Angeles. Srila Prabhupada spoke. And at one point in Srila Prabhupada's lecture, Prabhupada says, the main purpose of Lord Ram's appearance was to kill Ravana. And then Prabhupada corrected himself. He said, no, that's not true. That's not correct. The main purpose of the Lord's appearance is to please his devotees. And Srila Prabhupada writes here, in order to perform some pleasing work for the demigods. And we conclude from this statement that what is the most pleasing activities of the devotees of the Lord? The most pleasing activities is to hear about the transcendental, the superhuman activities of the personality of Godhead. It is explained in the Bhagavatam that such activities are the soothing balm for those souls caught up in the material world. And Shravanam is one of the 9 processes for devotional service. So when we hear and when we speak, that is actually devotional service. Hearing is a service. Hearing is a service. And it is said in the Bhagavatam, Shrinvata Swakatam Krishna, that Krishna becomes very pleased when the devotees hear about his activities and glorify his activities. So here we see that in this very concise verse, it's being revealed to us that the main purpose of the Lord, he performs activities for the pleasure of his devotees. But the Lord is known as expert, and he's so expert that he can accomplish many activities, many functions, many purposes at the same time. So when Lord Ram appears, he appears to give pleasure to his devotees, and at the same time he annihilates the miscreants. He annihilates the miscreants. And then we have some insight into the third line. What is very interesting in these verses and in the talks of the great devotees of the Lord is what pastimes do they choose to describe when they're trying to capture or describe the Lord's activities in a very concise verse. And in this verse, there are 2 pastimes of Lord Ram in particular that are described. The first pastime that is being described is the pastime where the Lord exhibited superhuman powers by controlling the Indian Ocean. And then killing the atheist Ravana. So it is very interesting. And when I read this verse, I asked myself the question, it's so interesting that Sutta Goswami chose to describe this pastime of the Lord. And what we see also in the ninth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, we see Sri Shukadev Goswami also describing the pastimes of the Lord. And in that, Sri Sutta Goswami says, the transcendental activities of Lord Ramachandra have been described by great saintly persons who have seen the truth. Because you have heard again and again about Lord Ramachandra, the husband of Mother Sita, I shall describe these activities only in brief. Please listen. So in the ninth canto, Sri Sukadev Goswami describes the activities of Lord Rama, and he tells Parikshit Maharaj, I know you, Parikshit Maharaj, from your childhood. You have been hearing repeatedly the pastimes of Lord Ramachandra from the Ramayana. So I will just briefly describe some activities. And in text number 4 and 5, Sri Shukadev Goswami very briefly, very beautifully, basically summarizes the entire Ramayana in these 2 verses. So one may think, okay, if Shukadev Goswami is summarizing the entire Ramayana in 2 verses, wouldn't it be interesting to see which of the Lord's activities he would choose to describe? And maybe we can meditate and consider why Sri Shukadev Goswami chose to describe these particular activities. And what is interesting, and I won't describe and talk about text number 4 and 5 of canto number 9, chapter number 10. You can read that for yourselves. And you can also take the opportunity to try to understand, why there are many very, very interesting reasons for that. And time wouldn't permit us to go through it for now, but there are many, many interesting. But the point I wanted to make is, in describing the activities of Lord Ram, in summarizing the entire Ramayana in 2 verses, Sri Shukadev Goswami describes the same activity that Sutta Goswami does in this verse. And he says there, describing Lord Ram, he therefore became angry, moving his eyebrows and thus frightening the ocean, who then allowed the Lord to construct a bridge to cross the ocean. So this activity, or this pastime of the ocean being defiant against Lord Ram, is described again. It's described again in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So there must be some purpose. And I was trying to meditate and think about, what particular aspect of this pastime is so compelling that it gets picked up by these 2 great devotees, Sutta Goswami and Shukadev Goswami. Would anyone like to share maybe their realizations of this? Have any of you thought about this in the past? And have you ever thought maybe why is of such significance? Okay, you can think about it. I like to share what I considered to be significant about that in terms of, lessons for myself as an aspiring devotee of the Lord. We see in this particular pastime that the Lord had a purpose. And what was the Lord's purpose? The Lord's purpose was to cross the Indian Ocean from India across to Lanka and rescue Sita. And the Lord very humbly approached the ocean. And it is said the Lord waited for 3 days, approached the ocean, and with the desire to cross the ocean, and the ocean creating a path for the Lord to go across. That was the purpose of the Lord. And the Lord had conveyed that purpose to the ocean. But the ocean was being defiant. The ocean was being obstructive towards the purpose of the Lord. And it is what at that time, as it was described in the Bhagavatam, the Lord's eyes became red hot. And there are different explanations. One is the Lord, just by staring at the ocean became so hot that none of the living entities, and neither could the ocean, tolerate. And there are other accounts which explain that being infuriated by the obstinacy of the ocean, Lord Ram fired arrows into the ocean. And when he fired these arrows, then he completely subdued all of the creatures in the ocean. They could not sustain the force of the Lord's arrows. And there was turmoil, and various living entities of the ocean started to emerge. And eventually, the ocean did surrender to the purpose of the Lord. But we know in Krishna consciousness that being a devotee means making our purpose one with the purpose of the Lord. And in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada writes something very interesting. Prabhupada says, in bhakti, there is also the concept of oneness. And when one first reads the statement, it's quite startling because, throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam and throughout the teachings and the writings of the Vaishnava Acharyas, this concept of oneness is completely denounced. It is completely rejected, becoming one with the Lord. But at the same time, we suddenly see this statement of, or this principle of oneness appearing in the Vaishnava culture. And Srila Prabhupada explains that. Prabhupada explains that oneness means, in Vaishnava culture, means making our desire one with the desire of the Lord. And interestingly, in the first canto, in the pastimes of Bhishma Dev, Srila Prabhupada quotes the gopis of Vrindavan. And he said, if there were any devotees who made their desire completely one with the desire of the Lord, that was the gopis of Vrindavan. And Prabhupada explains there that normally, when Krishna dances, he's the most super excellent dancer. No one can match the dancing movements of Krishna. Yet when Krishna was dancing with the gopis in the Rasa Leela, every movement that Krishna made in his dance, the gopis were able to perfectly match Krishna's movements. And the Vaishnava Acharyas, they comment on that. And they said, because of their desire being so much with one with the desire of the Lord, they were able to match every moment, because Krishna empowers his devotees to become one with him in strength. So the ocean, by neglecting to make its desire one with the desire of Lord Ram, it showed a very demoniac consciousness. And that is a consciousness that the devotees of the Lord never fall prey to. The devotees of the Lord always think how to make their desire one with the desire of the Lord. Srila Prabhupada or Sutta Goswami then talks about the killing of the atheist king Ravana. And, oh, sorry, before I go there, I just want to make one point. In the purport, Prabhupada talks about Lord Ram then defying the law of gravity. And Prabhupada said that this road that Lord Ram created, it was a royal road. And I latched onto that word royal road because sometimes when we picture this bridge that Lord Ram built, we think about rocks and we think about it being very uneven and shaky, and we wonder, how did they cross? Was it waving? Was it like very rough? You know, when you walk on rocks, it's very difficult. But Prabhupada says royal road. Normally the royal roads are completely smooth. Yeah? When these roads are made for the royalty, the roads are completely smooth because the whole intention there is that the chariot of the king will not be bumped. It'll just be a smooth ride. The purpose is a smooth ride. So we can see from this statement that this bridge that Lord Ram built, it was a very smooth, refined, like a royal road. The time goes so quickly. And then lastly, in this verse, and the purport, Prabhupada talks about something, and that is the consciousness of Ravana. And it's interesting, Prabhupada calls Ravana an atheist. An atheist. And yesterday, Krishna Kshetraswami was giving class at the Haveli, and he asked the question, was Hiranyakashipu an atheist or not? And then he revealed he was an atheist. And then we see here that Lord Ravana is also described as an atheist. And it's interesting because we know he was a great devotee of Lord Shiva. And same was, well, Hiranyakashipu, he was accepted Lord Brahma, and he approached Lord Brahma for boons. So one may think, how are they described as atheists? They are described as atheists because primarily an atheist consciousness is to deny the existence of God and to deny the power, the potencies of God. And Ravan, by kidnapping Sita, who was the consort of Lord Ram, by thinking that he could defeat Lord Ram, he was showing the qualities of being an atheist. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada also describes the other ways in which this atheistic consciousness was revealed. And in essence, Prabhupada talks about Ravan's desire to build a staircase from Earth planet to the heavenly planets. And, you know, Prabhupada talks about in the purport that such materialists, they want to achieve or get the credits or the benefits of some situation without achieving the necessary qualifications. Without achieving the necessary qualifications, they want to achieve some purpose. You know, to go to the heavenly planets is not a cheap. One needs to have heaps and tons of punya, pious activities. The demons are not allowed on the heavenly planets. But they try to circumvent this natural law by some material means. And Prabhupada often would talk about the moon planet being a heavenly planet. Yet the humans are trying to go to a heavenly planet by material means. And Prabhupada said they never went to the moon planet. The moon planet is a heavenly planet. They must have went to some other planet. So I've gone slightly over time. There's so much to say about this verse, but we'll stop here. We'll take any questions or comments that anyone has. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I just have a question.
Hare Krishna.
Like you just mentioned that Ravan was atheist, right? But they always been mentioned that he was a Shiva Bhakta. But what I'm thinking is he wasn't an atheist. He believed in Lord Shiva, but he had an atheist mentality.
Yes.
Is that what you mean?
Yes. What's the definition of an atheist? An atheist is someone who has an atheistic mentality. So externally, they may appear to be devotees and so on, but internally, they deny the existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we talk about denying the supremacy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that is like there are many criteria one can use for describing an atheist or not an atheist. But it would seem from the Bhagavatam and Srila Prabhupada's translation that is same like Hiranyakashipu. It is said that he was also an atheist because he was saying, where do you get your power from, Prahlad? Where is your God? Is he in this pillar? He couldn't accept that the Lord is everywhere. And someone who denies the supremacy and the supreme powers of the Lord, that is an atheistic mentality, and therefore we call them atheists, although they may be worshipping demigods and so on.
Okay, Prabhu. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Any other questions or comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Somebody who believes in God, prays for God, very spiritual, fasts, does everything, but they still eat meat and that. I can't seem to understand that. So where would they stand? Quite a few people I know, they're very, very religious, but they haven't given up meat or eggs.
Well, according to the Bhakti or the Vaishnava or the Vedas, the first principle of religion or dharma is obedience to the Lord. And when we say obedience means obedience to the instructions, the primary instructions of the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
So we understand that there are dharmic activities and there's ardharmic activities. And certainly eating of meat and the four regulative principles, no eating of meat, fish, and eggs, no intoxication, no gambling, and no illicit sex. Anyone who is not following those four regulative principles, they are not really considered to be on the platform of dharma, although they may do many rituals that are there in the Vedas, and they may pray and so on. So from that perspective, we do not consider them to be truly religious.
Yeah, because I know some older people as well who read the Gita, they read all the spiritual books, but I can't understand why, like you said, it's in the guidance, to follow the obediences. So I can't understand where they missed it, because I know some old people who go to all the bhajans and they're very, very spiritual, compared to me. But it's the bit that they still eat meat. I just can't understand that.
Yeah, they find it very difficult to give up their sense gratification. And although they read Bhagavad Gita, they're not reading Bhagavad Gita through parampara. And they haven't accepted,
Yeah.
sometimes you pick and choose. Someone who picks and chooses, okay, I like that instruction, I'll follow. But I don't like this instruction, so I won't follow. So they pick and choose. And religion cannot be like that, selective religion,
No.
So, although externally they may seem to be greatly religious persons, if one analyzes their life according to the Shastras, then one would not consider such people very religious.
No. Okay, thank you, Prabhuji, for clarifying it. It was just something that bugs me all the time, because, I am trying to follow the path, but, compared to me, they're way ahead of me, but not in the sense of food. Thank you anyway. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Vani Mataji.
Just can I add a little bit to that Mataji's question?
Yes, certainly.
Like, Prabhu, in one way, it's like an example of elephant, he takes a bath and then, he throws sand on him all over. It's similar to that, one way they're doing religious activities and the other end they are doing, religion. So, they wash off whatever they, the pious activities they gather. And also in Gita, like Krishna says, Mamevam se jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana. Every living entities are, his parts. They're all his children. So like, how does the father feel when somebody eats, kills their children and eat in front of them? So that's why, God will never be happy, Yeah, there are so many people, they're very religious, they follow all these rules and regulations on certain days, and on certain days they, eat meat and do whatever they want. So it just nullifies, isn't it? Or sometimes even create more papa than punya, so they don't get much benefit out of it.
True, very true. Thank you for that, Krishna Vani.
I don't have much knowledge, but just a little bit.
No, what you said was profound. Thank you. Urmila Mataji, you wanted to say something? You unmuted yourself.
I don't know I should speak or not, Prabhuji, but in the past when I was in East Africa and their families eating meat, so it surprised me, but they said that they are allowed to eat because in their forefathers were Kshatriya and they called themselves now Rajput. So the warriors were allowed to eat because then they get the strength. They're religious, but I was surprised any family eating, any Hindu family eating meat.
Yeah. Well, I think they are taking the Shastras out of context, and ultimately they're just using some aspect of Shastra to really just to support their sense gratification.
And if there is anything religious they want to perform at their place, then a few days before they clean the inside, the fridge and house clean and everything, so there shouldn't be anything in the house.
Yeah, such people, by doing that, they understand that this is not a very sattvic activity.
Yeah, because in East Africa, people used to do Satyanarayan Puja. And so then when they decide, they say, no, house there shouldn't be anything in the house which we cannot offer to God. And we should not keep also in the fridge.
True, yeah. That is not correct. That's not correct. Thank you, Mataji, for sharing that experience. Indulekha Mataji, you wanted to add anything?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you for your nice class. Just one thing from Valmiki Ramayana. we know that Lord Ram, he sat by the ocean for 3 days and he prayed kind of to ask permission from Varundev before starting to build a bridge on the sea. But why did Varundev did not accept? The thing is that Varundev, he is subordinate to Lord Ram. So he didn't want to show that the Lord is praying to me. He wanted the Lord to command him. That's why Lord Ram got angry. This is a bit, that's why Lord Varundev at the end became, when he saw that the anger is kind of commanding, right? He is the authority. That's why he commanded. Then Varundev appeared and gave him the permission. It's not that he was asking permission. Varundev just wanted to show that he is nothing. The Lord is the Lord. Thank you very much, Prabhuji.
Thank you for sharing that. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Ajay Prabhu, you wanted to add anything?
I just want to ask, earlier in the purport, it says the attempt to fly to other planets by material means is a challenge to the established order. Is Srila Prabhupada just referring to Ravana, or is he also implying current science?
I took it as both, Prabhu. As both Ravana and current, anyone who's endeavoring to reach, a higher planet without the necessary qualifications. It applies to both. And this is what has happened in the history of the world. That attempt has been made.
So in terms of the current space exploration, is that against the established order?
Don't know about space exploration.
I mean, going to Mars. They're preparing to go to Mars.
Yeah. Yes.
It's not, of course, it's not upper planetary system, but
yeah, I think one would need to study these planets. Like Prabhupada said, if they did go to a planet, it may have been another planet, Rahu, or so on. But the principle is one should have the necessary qualifications to go to higher planetary systems. I think that's the point. To go to some planet which is completely dry, whether they're actually seeing it or experiencing it, whether they're getting facade up, who knows? It's difficult to say. But the principle is being established here by Srila Prabhupada. Okay, dear devotees, it's now 8:46. Thank you so much for your participation and your attention. All glories to your service by consistently coming to hear and read and discuss Srimad Bhagavatam. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripasindhubheva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Anantapuri Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Divo. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.